Hi, hello guys, my name is Mia Marie and you are currently watching my Synastry Compatibility series where I go through all the 12 signs, sun signs, and how they get along. Now, as a general disclaimer, we reference so much more than just the sun sign for compatibility, but the importance of the sun and understanding someone's sun sign and accepting it and supporting it is that the sun sign describes the motives, the behaviors, the experiences that contribute to someone's sense of sanity. So we're not talking so much about what someone needs emotionally or how they flirt or what makes them great in bed, all of those very, romantic topics. We're talking about how to support someone's vitality, someone's sense of self, and someone's healing human journey. So keep in mind that this is just a gentle introduction, and you can get so much more by booking a session with me or another fantastic astrologer. I hope you enjoy. Sun in Aries. Someone who is born with their sun sign in Aries is here to establish a sense of self. Their entire life, their whole healing journey will be about them uncovering and establishing who they are. And they'll do this over and over again by putting themselves in situations where they must exercise courage. Their ultimate motive is to transform their desires into will. I really want this job. I really want this partner. I really want to move here. I really want to start this business, and then doing it, but keeping their higher self in mind. So because Aries is step one, it seems kind of strange, but it's the child of the zodiac, but at the same time, there are strong correlations with leadership. So you'll find, because in order to establish a sense of self, you have to learn how to lead a life. And that's what Aries is going to be doing the whole time. And so there is a quality with leadership of them being bossy. And this is interpreted in two different ways. If you're someone who's being bossed around, you're like, dude, let me make my own choices. You're being a little too domineering. You're not listening to my ideas. I feel like I'm just a pawn on your chessboard. But when an Aries is bossing you around, it's because they either care about you, they care about what you're doing and what the outcome is, or they care about both. And what you have to understand is that the way that they are talking to you is the way that they're talking to themselves. And so for them to give you directives or even to talk to you no, this is what it is, that's their way of loving, is by leading. And it's hard for them to differentiate. Another thing that you'll notice when you're dating an Aries is that when you're sharing stories about your day or something that you've overcome or something that you're excited about, a challenge point, they're going to bring it back to themselves. And it seems selfish, right? You're sitting here trying to decompress. You want that camaraderie, you want that partnership, and they just kind of steal the mic and start talking about who they are and their experiences. And again, it's because as they're looking at you, it's almost like a mirroring effect. As they're looking at you, they're having a better understanding of who they are, what your place is in the world, but also what their place is in the world. And so, and the same thing is if you continue to talk about yourself for extended periods of time, they have the greatest tolerance for it because they do the same thing. So it's not so much that they don't care about you. The motive is what drives people, and it's the sun sign. So what's driving this person constantly is to figure out who they are in multiple different situations. Being a fire sign means that they like being activated and energized and inspirational and motivating. And with the fire being expressed through Aries, all of that energy goes towards the self. It does. It goes towards the self. And so if you are dating an Aries and they are not motivating you, they're not pushing you to accomplish your goals, they're not trying to take leadership in your relationship, then something is off. If they're wanting to stay on the couch all day, if they're not exercising, if they are feeling low, fatigued, then something is happening in their emotional body that's preventing them from keeping their pilot light lit. A lot of the times, these are people who Aries are extreme, so the pilot light is just out. Another thing is they don't like a plan. I'm speaking specifically just about Aries sun. If they have different placements, like a moon in Capricorn or a Venus in Capricorn, they're going to love a plan. But if we're just talking specifically about what this person's ego needs as it's developing in lockstep with the soul, this is somebody who needs to not plan. Why? Because they're trying to build courage. They have to put themselves in new situations where they don't have any tools. They just have themselves, their mind, and their gut. And it's by consciously meeting each one of these challenges and overcoming them and maybe getting knocked down and getting back up, they're learning that they can trust in themselves, that they're capable, that they can function independently. And they learn who they are through those trials and tribulations, which is why they don't need a plan. Oh, and another thing is they feel very comfortable if you are completely yourself. They don't want you to be polite. They don't want you to be proper. I mean, again, if you have like those Capricorn placements or something that's a little bit more earthy, then they will prioritize those things, but solely the sun, they feel comfortable when you're cursing or when you're loud or when you're showing them expressions, because it gives them permission to be themselves totally. They can relax. And not only that, they can accept you as you are, and you can accept them as they are. Aries is ruled by Mars, and so it's competitive. Now, this is where in love, they kind of get a bad rep, because yet again, there is this energy that's trying to manifest itself in real life, and it's kind of showing up in the wrong way. We're talking about love, right? Aries is ruled by Mars, and so it's competitive by nature. Its way of flirting, its way of playing, its way of connecting with you truly is wanting to play sports, wanting to beat you at those sports. Kind of like anything you can do, I can do better type attitude. That's how they show love. And the best way that I can use an example is like soldiers at war. They sit and they taunt and make fun of each other relentlessly. They throw out the jokes, but they will, out in the world, die for you. They will show up for you in every which way that they can. Now, some deal breakers for Aries. Anyone who encroaches on their autonomy. The opposite of Aries is Libra. Libra is all about partnership and companionship. So you can see how in love, we're working from a deficit, right? Aries is not programmed inherently for partnership because it doesn't even really know who it is yet. But anyone who's like, oh, we like this, Aries will be very quick to tell you, like, that's a you thing. This is you. This is me. And it's not because they don't like you and they want to separate from you. It's because they don't want to become one. They want to understand the difference. That's what their whole life goal is about, is understanding the difference between them and reality. And so if you are wanting to be their companion, or if you want to constantly run errands with them or do things with them, it's going to repulse them. They don't need a sidekick. They mob alone. Another deal breaker for Aries is not prioritizing them. Now that sounds kind of strange given everything that I just said, but an Aries can tell when you're not number one, when they're not number one, right? It's that competitive nature. If they feel like you are prioritizing someone else, they're pretty accepting of like work and outside accomplishments, but if you're prioritizing someone over them, done. And they're also a little flickery with their flame. So sometimes the relationship is really hot and heavy, and it's important that they keep that fire lit, but you can find an inconsistency in their energy depending on how they're feeling internally and what you're giving them. If you are not making them feel as if they are important, that flame can come off real quick. Sun in Aries is also unapologetically itself unless it's being shamed over and over again for the way that they're trying to get their motives met or their needs met. And the best example that I'll use is like a toddler in a grocery store. Toddlers don't want to be at a grocery store. They don't see the need for it, right? We see the need, but they don't see the need. And so what do? They throw a tantrum. They don't care who sees. They don't care what people think about them. All they can think is, I don't like this. I would rather be somewhere else. And I'm going to make it very clear to the person who I'm involved with. And so you will find yourself managing tantrums with Aries from time to time. Sun in Aries is bold, courageous, independent, vivacious, feisty. They have the zest for life that is unquenchable unless something is seriously wrong. And they're also a spiritual warrior of types. And so you can expect that if you have an Aries on your team, that they are going to protect you, that they're going to make sure that you're leading a life that you're proud of, that they're proud of. They have your back to the fullest extent. Someone who is born with their sun in Pisces has a soul that came to this earth to break down all barriers that stand in the way of oneness. Now, Pisces has a reputation of not having boundaries or lacking boundaries or having porous boundaries. And when you hold in mind what their goal is, it kind of makes sense that it's hard for them to throw up that wall because it flies in the face of what they stand for. They want to bring love and unity to everything. It's a very gentle loving, accepting soul and energy. Now, this doesn't mean they don't need boundaries, but it means that there's going to be resistance towards them. Once you explain to a Pisces that boundaries exist to protect them and to shield them, it can act as a barrier between people's energy and them. Then they'll be a little bit more on board with the program. Pisces is ruled by two planets, traditionally Jupiter, and modern day says Neptune. So you will find two different types of Pisces characters. A Jupiterian Pisces, it has a similar energy to Sagittarius, where they're expansive and big and larger than life, but it's via their emotions. And they are a little bit more positive than what you would expect. They want to play, they want to have fun. The other Neptunian Pisces is more introverted. The first one is extroverted. This one is introverted. It wants to look on the inner world, not the outer world, and it wants to expand there. And they're a little bit more reserved. They're focused on like their artwork behind closed doors and their poetry and the ways in which they love themselves. It's kind of like they take that same energy that Sagittarius would in the external world and they project it in their home space, in their private life. And with Neptune Pisces, you often see someone who has almost Capricornian expressions where they fall prey to depression because they get stuck in themselves. They get stuck in their own stories and the depression manifests. And when depression shows up in someone's life, it's the soul saying like, I don't want to play this role anymore. I don't want to be involved in this life anymore. And at that point, when you have that awareness, then Pisces can adjust their schedule and use their energy in different ways to erase the depression that they're currently managing. So keep that in mind. Which type of Pisces do you have? A Jupiterian Pisces or a Neptunian? Pisces is a water sign. It's the eldest water sign, but it's also the most sensitive and the most vulnerable. And the easiest way I can explain it is by the symbol for Pisces. It's a fish. A fish has no protective layer. It goes with the flow. It has no choice unless it's swimming upstream, exhausting itself, trying to fight the flow of life. But Scorpio has that stinger. Cancer has the crab shells and those little crabby hands to protect itself. Pisces is out in the open. It is the depository for the collective emotion. Now, they're not going to think about it that way. You're not going to think about it that way. In fact, a lot of what they're processing isn't something that's directly happened to them. Oftentimes, you'll find that when a Pisces is weighed down or they're feeling a strange mood for a reason that they can't explain, it's because of something that's happening out in the world. Now, when this happens, it's important that Pisces meditates because that is the safest, healthiest way for them to process their emotions. The alternative is that they're paying attention so closely to what's happening. They're paying attention to the mood, the vibes, the smells, the way that you're carrying yourself. They're paying attention to all the things that you aren't saying and try to integrate what you are saying. And it creates this glazed over look as if they're daydreaming. But really, they're collecting so much information that you are not even willingly communicating to them. Now, when this happens, it can create a feeling of overwhelm and they need to leave the room. They are an introverted sign. Specifically, just Sun in Pisces is an introverted sign. And so what it will do in those instances is it will literally escape the room. But then once it's in its own room, it will either meditate and process the emotion, or it will escape through some kind of substance. So smoking, drinking, being on the computer for hours on end, watching TV mindlessly, to the point where they're getting lost though. And so you can create this habit of constant escapism to the point where you're never really rooted or grounded. And so when I say meditation for Pisces, I don't mean, doing yoga, your fingers are like this, you're like, in yoga pants, so religious about your practice. That works too. But what I'm saying is you need to bring yourself into a brain state where you can close the door, sit with yourself, and just feel and rinse. It's this internal process of you letting the waters that don't belong to you just whoosh, go right off your body. So Pisces are mystics. They're mild, right? They go with the flow. Now, because Pisces is a mutable sign, and this is true for all mutable signs, it's equally as important to look at where the sun is placed, like which house it's placed in, because the house will greatly affect this changeable energy. It will give it a more concrete flavor. But just purely Pisces energy is kind of a let go and let God type attitude. And what they're here to do is to develop a relationship with spirit. It could be religious, it could be spiritual, it could be whatever it is, but they are constantly striving to reach spiritual enlightenment. And the way they do that is by taking care of their body, taking care of themselves, but arriving to that space where they can prioritize themselves and their health before others. It's a journey. So this is someone who in relationships is willing to make the sacrifices to show up. They are caring, they're empathetic, they are good with emotions. They can sit with you when you are expressing, like, they can see the most terrible behavior and not judge you because they see through to what you are made of, what your soul is, and how much you're struggling. And so Pisces can find themselves in situations with people who are dangerous or the bad boy, and they have this kind of phenomenon. And this is true with Pisces men too, where they like the damsel in distress. They like saving somebody. And with women, it's like, well, if I just show up in this way, and if I just do this, then they'll change, and then the bad boy will be saved. The men are like, here's this damsel in distress. I'm going to help her because she needs me. And so that language can exist with a relationship with the sun in Pisces. So being the eldest water sign, they have the qualities and strengths of Cancer and Scorpio, but they're not focused on themselves. They're not specifically focused on one-on-one relationships. They're focused on humanity, the universe, the ethers. They're going as large and as big as you can imagine. They're leaving this plane in so many different ways. And so some deal breakers for a Pisces character is if you judge or if you try and stand in the way of their spiritual development. Now, I said earlier that they are sacrificing when it comes to relationships. This is not one of those areas where they're going to be sacrificing. A developed Pisces, if you are standing in the way of their spiritual journey, they will cut you off because that is what gives them fuel. That's what keeps them sane. And so if you're not supportive of whatever philosophy, astrology, right before you hello, they're going to be turned off. They're going to think you're closed-minded and they will feel unaccepted. And what makes that even worse is that they are so accepting that when it's not mirrored back to them, it makes it easier for them to step away. Another thing they don't like is if you're disrespectful to other people or if you treat other people poorly, specifically people who don't have the same resources that you have. So if you're rude to marginalized groups of people, or if you treat homeless people poorly or as if they're less than, they don't see, or they don't, they see it, but they don't subscribe to like the hierarchy that people are better than others. In their mind, everyone is the same. They're not going to bow to someone because of a specific title. They understand that when you walk out of your workplace, you guys are just humans face to face. And so if you insist that they take on the beliefs and that you subscribe to what the rest of society is doing, they're also going to turn away from you. And similar to that, if you are someone who lives and dies by your schedule, if you just do to do, if you want your day booked from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep, Pisces is going to be repulsed by you in some way, shape, and form because you're not taking care of yourself. There is no spiritual life there. You're just functioning to function and you're forgetting to live and to exist. And Pisces needs the flexibility in a schedule in their day to go with the flow because their feelings change. Sometimes inspiration hits them at the most spontaneous time. And if you are like, no, you said you would be here and we have to do this and this and this and this, they're going to feel as if their creativity is being squandered. Like you're taking away something quite precious, and it is precious for them. It's kind of hard to tell when you have reached a deal breaker with Pisces because they're not so confrontational, specifically just Sun in Pisces, all other aspects ignored. They're not confrontational in that way. They don't want to feel uncomfortable. It's more of like a silent, I got it. This is who you are. These are the decisions that you make. And they will just not make time for you, or they won't show up, or they'll cancel last minute. They show that they care with their presence. And so if they continuously reject your opportunity or your bid for attention. It's either that they are avoiding reality in general because they're dealing with something privately that they're probably not explaining to you, or you've just kind of left a sour taste in their mouth and they don't want to spend time with you. But overall, Pisces are really sweet, accepting lovers. And the gift that they bring to you is some kind of like spiritual awakening or some invitation to go higher, to elevate, to escape this reality that is so prominent and overwhelming. I will say, two fish, opposite directions. Pisces are known, similar to Gemini, they're known to have multiple marriages because they just change quite frequently. And there is this fickle quality and emotional instability, kind of like the ocean, you know, always changing in and out, in and out. There is this quality to them. But that aside, it's not a reflection of you. That aside, when they are there and when they are with you, they want to gift you with whatever they have. That's just the way they are. Pisces and Aries. I love this combination. Chef's kiss. We have the oldest and the youngest in a relationship together. Pisces is the oldest, Aries is the youngest. Now, as long as both of these signs, because they're fire and water, and so they're fueled in different ways, but as long as they go into the relationship understanding that Aries needs at all costs to protect its autonomy, to be self-sufficient, to be independent, and Pisces needs some escape from reality, it needs to work on its spiritual journey and enlightenment, then this should be a pretty easy combination, right? Just accept that from the jump. Accept that you guys have different motives and different ways of moving. Now, the reason why I love this relationship so much is because they balance each other out. Pisces can just kind of roam. It goes with the flow. It does whatever is needed. So here's someone who will float and do whatever is needed, and Aries is like, oh great, I have a list of chores for you to do. Pisces will appreciate being able to help in that way. They like being of service in their relationships, and they can also find themselves like aimlessly looking around, wandering around, being up in their mind and their daydreams. And so Aries is like, hello, wham, come back down to earth. There are things to do here. And so I find that Aries motivates Pisces in a really positive way. And also Pisces is emotionally available for Aries. Aries tends to experience extreme emotions, and they're not always the most gentle about explaining how they feel. And Pisces is tolerant of these emotional tantrums, and they can show up in ways that many other people would be like, don't talk to me like that, or, you know, don't watch your mouth. Aries is bold and it's courageous, and it's got a little bit of it's represented by the ram, right? So it's a strong personality, and Pisces is not out here measuring dicks. So it's good in that way. It makes them both feel good when they're talking to each other, because Pisces is looking at Aries for this tantrum like, oh my gosh, I see exactly why you're acting like this. You know, in their mind, they're like, poor thing, you know, like, let me help you. And as Aries is getting the help that they want, they're like, yes, I'm getting supported. And so it's a double positive. And what's beautiful also is that Pisces can be like a damsel in distress. They often like want to be rescued or saved. And with other people, Pisces can get away with that type of behavior, but an Aries will say, okay, I'm going to save you this once, and then I'm going to teach you how to save yourself. Because again, they're going to want to protect their independence, they have to work on themselves. They're building their own muscle of courage as it relates to accomplishing their career or life aspirations. They're transforming desire into will, right, through action. So there is no savior martyr complex here. Also, Pisces will go out into the world and they tend to get taken advantage of because, again, they're mild. They don't really care. They're like, okay, fine, I'll show up. I'll come in early. I'll leave late. Aries is going to be like, absolutely not. They're paying you overtime. They're paying you overtime, or like you have to draw a boundary. And so Aries is protective over Pisces, and that kind of alleviates the burden of having to set boundaries because Aries will create them. But I can't make this video and not talk about the very obvious difference that Aries is a fire sign and Pisces is a water sign. So what does that mean in English? Well, what fuels Aries is doing something, right? Fire needs to burn something or it's going to burn itself. If Aries is not exercising, if they're not on the move, if they're not working on a project, specific to Aries, if they are not developing themselves and exercising courage by doing new things or starting new things, they are going to burn themselves and turn themselves into ash. Their pilot light is going to go out. So they need to stay in motion, and they want to move often quite quickly or at a pace that just feels comfortable to them. Now, Pisces may not naturally understand that need. It's like, well, why do you need to go walk around? Why are you busy all the time? Why are you like, whoa, what do you mean you have to go like somewhere, be out there? Because it's overwhelming for a Pisces to be out there. In their mind, they want to come home. They want to escape reality because they are a depository for everyone's emotions. They're so fluid and they're like a sponge. They absorb everything that people are saying and they're not saying, their tone, their mood, the smells, the vibe. And so that world that Aries is so anxious to be a part of is the world that they are trying to pull away from. And that's kind of the difference is, Aries may not recognize that Pisces needs to tap out, and Pisces may not recognize that Aries needs to get out. Okay, well, that's what I got for you. I hope that you liked this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you would like to work one-on-one with me, you can find me at wellandrising.com, or you can reach out to me in the comments. Toodles, bye.